In celebration of their 10th year anniversary of Twisted Tower Dyer's debut, Heaven and Hell Records is reissuing limited collector editions of the band's first two albums, The Curse of Twisted Tower and The Isle of Hydra. The original release of these two CDs have become legendary and are sure to forever be held as classics among the true heavy metal underground. When The Curse of Twisted Tower came out, you already released several demos with EPs and other singers over the course of 4 years. How did the fans respond to TTD's 1999 debut full-length album?
I think you had a lot of people that really loved it because it was rough around the edges.
Fans seemed to respond really well.
I think the response for it was really pretty good. Mostly the commentary on it was that the music was really good and the vocals were really good and the production was horrible.
I think the album kind of took on a cult status with a lot of people are into underground music.
You had a lot of people that bashed it because the production pretty much sucked.
The response was pretty positive overall. It was the first thing we'd really put out with Tony, who was our singer for years and years and years at that point in time. So, it was a good response.
But I think in the long run, the production probably didn't do us many favors.
How did you meet up with the English label, the Miskatonic Foundation, who released Curse?
Rich Walker from the band Solstice created Miskatonic Foundation, and we're one of the first bands, or I think actually the very first band on that label. He's since done many other bands.
When we put out Curse, there wasn't this little thing called the internet. People actually sent tapes to each other and did a lot of tape trading, and there was a really active underground scene at that point in time.
Our first singer, Tom Phillips, went over to sing for the band Solstice, and he took our first demo over to England with him, and Rich Walker from Solstice heard it, who was starting his label, the Miskatonic Foundation, at the time.
We were all big fans of his band Solstice, and when we finally were putting stuff out, he was always a big fan of the band, and he was really interested in putting out our material.
He liked the stuff and just approached us and said, "Hey, can I put out your album?" And at the time, he was pretty much the only one that wanted to do it, so the only one that was actually willing to fork over any money to record it. So, so he had the privilege of releasing our first album.
Compared to most productions of its era, Curse was a bit rough around the edges. Was this an intentional move to garner some kind of cult status?
No.
No, it was recorded the way it was because we didn't have any money, and it was the first album, and that's just kind of how it goes.
No, not at all.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. We weren't trying to get any sort of cult following and purposely having bad production.
I'm actually surprised it did as well as it did, considering how bad it sounded. I used to always tell people it sounded like a really good album with a pillow over the speaker.
We didn't know what we were doing in the studio. We didn't have any money, and the studio we went to was pretty meager.
You always make the best product that you can. It's just at the time when you're starting to put out albums, you don't have a lot of experience in the recording studio, so your stuff is going to sound more primitive.
And you can really tell with the new mixing and mastering we've done with the original tracks how much different it could have been back then. But it's kind of neat to clean it up now and hear what it sounds like.
Now we have a much more hands-on approach to it. We've done 4 albums, so we've been in and out of the studio a bunch of times. We know our way around a little more, and so of course the production's going to get better as time goes on. But I mean, it's a learning curve. It's probably why most bands' first albums don't sound as sophisticated as their later stuff, because as they grow, they write better, and also as they grow, they learn more tricks and how to do things in the studio better.
I think that it helped kind of get us an underground, status as a band, and I think it kind of worked in our advantage, even though it might have turned a lot of other people off. I think it did us justice in the long run.
Curse spans the spectrum from the 70s psychedelic to Iron Maiden. Who and what inspires you?
My favorite band ever is probably a band called Voivod, and I mean, Voivod is just everybody from Northern Virginia had a huge Voivod influence on what they were doing, and they're hugely influenced by Pink Floyd, which I suppose could bring in some of the 70s psychedelic kind of stuff.
Huge Pink Floyd fan, huge Blue Oyster Cult fan, obviously huge Maiden fan, Old Thin Lizzy.
I mean, at the time we recorded Curse, I was still playing in a death metal band, and so I think a lot of that early stuff with all the songs having 1,000 riffs and, you know, being real busy musically shows a lot of the death metal influence that we had on us at the time.
We had a lot of time in Mark's basement doing nothing but jamming.
Actually, when I joined TTD, I was playing with Mark in a death metal band, and I've always been into like faster, heavier, you know, more aggressive music, and since I've kind of gone back to, you know, what should have been my roots and got into like Thin Lizzy and, you know, all the old metal stuff.
Definitely on the first album, those influences were kind of all over the place. And, you know, songs like Valkyrie Death Squad, as you hear, stuff that was pretty much taken right off of Animals from Pink Floyd.
I mean, really, between all of the stuff that everybody in TTD listens to, it covers almost every kind of music you could possibly imagine.
As Scott said previously, it was, you know, the three of them just sitting there kind of hammering out riffs and drinking beer and, you know, being high school kids and writing. I think they kind of wrote the material on Curse to try to impress themselves and maybe their friends and stuff, and try to, you know, cram a lot of riffs together. And it ended up being really interesting stuff, but it was, you know, it wasn't as streamlined in terms of the writing, you know, the writing process and material and stuff as a lot of our later stuff. So
we were busy doing a lot of extracurricular substances at the time, and that's how that album turned out.
I think we've definitely grown as a band and learned how to write better music and write more around vocal lines, doing choruses and verses and stuff, and trying to not make it boring and predictable, but something that people can kind of identify with a little better.
How do you think Curse helped the band move forward?
I mean, it got us rolling. I mean, before the demos and stuff kind of laid some groundwork and got it so people knew who we were and stuff. But I mean, you know, the following really started, you know, and Hellion picked it up and started doing some distribution. Hellion Records in Germany started doing it. It got us on Wacken in 2000. You know, after we released it, we had to play the Wacken Open Air Festival, which is, I mean, you know, the haven for heavy metal. It's the biggest metal festival in the world.
Got us our first trip to Europe. We've been back several times. Got us, you know, our first label.
Curse, when Curse came out, it got us a good, strong underground following, I think. We had the demos, and then the Curse came out, and, you know, it garnered some fans, but it was still real underground.
For a little band like us, you know, for that album is responsible for getting us on the bill for something like that. I mean, you know, you can't have an album do something better for you than that, I guess, other than possibly selling a buttload of copies and making us rich, which it didn't do. But
a lot of things kind of took off with that first album. So once Tony joined the band, we actually had a stable lineup.
It was a very good album for us. It really, you know, it got us rolling and really got us into doing Isle of Hydra, where we had advanced our songwriting a little bit and were a little bit more familiar with working with Tony. And it laid the groundwork for us to do Hydra, which is what I think really, once we hit Hydra, the momentum really, you know, the ball was going downhill and we were really going somewhere after that.